The operational method of the 46th Guards Night Bomber Aviation Regiment can only be understood clearly when set against the dominant assumptions of Second World War air warfare. Across most theaters, effectiveness in the air was associated with speed, payload, altitude, and survivability. Aircraft were designed to reach targets quickly, deliver large quantities of ordnance, and either absorb damage or avoid it through maneuver and protection. Within that framework, advantage was measured in power and scale. The regiment did not possess those advantages. The Polikarpov Po-2 was slow, lightly constructed, and minimally protected. It could not outrun enemy fighters, could not carry heavy bomb loads, and offered little defense against concentrated fire. To operate within the dominant model would have meant operating at a constant disadvantage with no compensating strength. What emerges across multiple accounts is not an attempt to overcome this imbalance through incremental improvement, but a shift away from the model itself. The regiment's effectiveness did not come from competing within a system that favored speed and mass. It came from adopting a method that reduced the importance of those factors. This shift is central. The Night Witches did not win by doing the same thing less effectively. They operated by changing what counted as effectiveness. Once the need for a different approach is established, the structure of that approach becomes clearer. The regiment operated primarily at night, at low altitude, and with a high degree of manual control. These choices were not stylistic. They were dictated by both limitation and opportunity. Night operations reduced visibility and made interception more difficult, but they also placed heavy demands on navigation and coordination. The aircraft's minimal instrumentation meant that pilots relied on maps, landmarks, and experience rather than advanced navigational aids. The environment was uncertain, and that uncertainty had to be managed through attention rather than equipment. Low-altitude flight further shaped the method. Flying closer to the ground reduced exposure to certain forms of detection and interception, but it increased the risk associated with terrain, obstacles, and limited reaction time. It also narrowed the margin for error during approach and release. The aircraft could not rely on altitude as a buffer. Precision became more important because there was less space in which to correct mistakes. Within this framework, the approach to a target was not a single action, but a sequence of controlled decisions. Distance, angle, speed, and timing had to be coordinated without the support systems available to more advanced aircraft. The method demanded attention rather than automation. It required the pilot and navigator to maintain a shared understanding of position and timing under conditions that did not simplify themselves. The most distinctive element of this method, the engine cut and glide, emerges directly from these conditions. As the aircraft approached its target, the engine would be reduced or shut off entirely, allowing the plane to glide silently toward the release point. This maneuver removed the most obvious indicator of the aircraft's presence, its sound. The effect of this change was not absolute invisibility. The aircraft could still be seen or heard under certain conditions. What it did was alter the timing of detection. Without the engine, the aircraft became more difficult to locate until it was already close to its target. By the time sound or movement was registered, the window for effective response was reduced. This technique also reflects the relationship between fragility and precision. The Po-2's slow speed and simple construction made it vulnerable, but those same characteristics allowed it to fly in ways that faster, heavier aircraft could not easily replicate. The glide was not an improvisation added to an otherwise standard method. It was a direct use of the aircraft's limitations as a tactical feature. The release itself was simple in mechanical terms, but it occurred within a tightly constrained window. The aircraft had to be positioned correctly in space and time, with limited ability to adjust once the glide began. After release, the engine would be restarted, and the aircraft would leave the target area to prepare for the next sortie. At the level of the individual aircraft, this method depended on coordination between a two-person crew. One member flew the aircraft, maintaining control under low visibility and managing the approach. The other handled navigation, and in many cases the preparation and release of bombs. These roles were distinct but interdependent. The success of the approach relied on both members maintaining awareness of position, timing, and sequence. The physical demands of this work were constant. Open cockpits exposed crews to cold and wind. Communication had to occur under conditions where speech could be difficult. The repetition of sorties meant that fatigue was not an occasional factor, but a sustained condition. Within this environment, the method had to be repeatable. It could not depend on exceptional moments of clarity or isolated acts of precision. It had to function reliably across multiple flights, often within a single night. This is where the regiment's operational discipline becomes most visible. The method was not defined by a single maneuver, but by the consistency with which a sequence of actions could be performed under pressure. Each sortie required the same alignment of approach, glide, release, and withdrawal. The effectiveness of the unit depended on how consistently that sequence could be executed, not on how dramatically it could be performed.